Oddly enough, I did not think he was that big
I know. I
until he
remember that.
got by the boat.
Hmm.
She When she got by the boat, she became a big fish. She could see that boat and she went into panic mode.
What is up, Fisher people? Welcome to another episode of the Cast a Line podcast. Been working on my radio voice. How am I doing? Good? Not so good? Anyway, storytelling's been a big part of humans and society for a long, long time, obviously. And one of the things that always gets me excited when I can't go fishing is to tell and hear fishing stories of the past, even if I've heard them, many, many times before. So in this episode, I'm doing something I've wanted to do for a long time, which is sitting down with my father and just chatting fishing stories. I've heard almost all of them plenty of times, but they're still exciting for me, and you may not have heard any of them, so hopefully they'll all be exciting for you. He's a great father, he's a pretty darn good fisherman, and he's also a really good storyteller, so make yourself comfortable and enjoy the show. Here's my dad.
What is up, Dad? How you doing, man?
I'm great. Yourself, my son?
I'm great. I'm always in a good mood talking about fishing stories and all that kind of stuff. Does this bring you back to your days as like a sheriff at all? Like doing an interview and stuff again?
Yeah, but I usually had a piece of gum in my mouth when I did those.
You're not supposed to chew gum when you talk in public.
Yeah, I always did. Every interview I did, I had a piece of gum in my mouth.
Did it like keep your mouth wet or what?
I don't know. I don't know what my reason was for it. Bad
Are you
habit. Just threw one in. I don't know.
are you like a fidgeter too? Like I always feel like I'm doing something when I'm like talking. To get
No. I think that the whole stare at the camera crap. Somebody's interviewing me and they're like, "Talk to the camera." Why would I
ready.
talk to the camera when I have you to look at?
Hmm.
That's semi rude, and I don't know. I found it mostly annoying to do interviews, but I did them.
You've gotten better at like showing the camera stuff when you do fishing videos with me now. Same
How,
concept, right?
how so?
I usually have to tell you to do it though, because yeah,
Do
you're
what?
usually me in the video, which is great. But like, hey, viewers, here's a fish. Look at my fish I caught.
Oh, oh, that's just to piss Randy off. Be showy and
Oh, Randy,
100% about catching a fish bigger than his. It was not about showing it to the camera.
right, right. Because Randy was being so showy and all.
Well, he does get a little showy. Mhm. But he
Well,
makes
well,
a mean steak. So how do you know? I mean, honestly, when we were there, that's the best steak I've ever had.
which is crazy because Kat, his wife, for those watching, cooks so much good food, and then all of a sudden Randy decides he's going to grill steaks and knock it out of the park.
Right, and we normally would go to Totten Trail and have what I consider one of the best steaks ever, but that night at Randy's, that steak was amazing.
Mhm. It was good,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And he had to go from one grill to the other because one of them quit on him.
Yeah, he started it on like what was he? An outdoor is the same one you got? What do you call those things? The outdoor, like
Which,
the
yeah,
is
which
it
one was he
the
on?
smoker? Is it the Blackstone? Is the word I'm thinking of? Is that
Okay,
right?
yeah. And then he went to a mini one to finish him because I think he lost gas in the other one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So to take a steak off one, partially done, and go to a second, pretty phenomenal to have that good of a steak. There's no panic in Randy.
No, he bounces me out while we're making fishing videos because I'm always not always, but I can get like, oh, this isn't. Oh, we got a new spot. Move. Oh, geez, we're running out of time. We got to get some fish on. Oh my gosh! And Randy's like, it's fine. We got
He,
time.
he's pretty laid back.
He's so laid back.
Yeah.
People say that I'm laid back, but if they only knew like what was going on in here, I'm not even close to laid back.
Okay, maybe you're laid back now. In your early videos, you weren't laid back.
No, no, I had to work on that.
That
It
all
comes
came with
with
time.
time and experience.
Exactly.
Anyway, The
And
whole room.
fish
And
makes a huge difference.
fish makes a huge difference as well. If the
Right.
fishing's good, anybody can be relaxed, right?
Well, the fish can do the video for you.
Mhm.
When you're not catching fish and you have to actually use the footage to teach somebody something, then it's
Mhm.
completely different.
Right.
Right.
Well, I like to think that it's all about me, but I suppose the fish play a role.
Um, not gonna lie, watching a hook set is pretty cool.
Hmm.
Okay. Watching the anticipation of, oh, this is big, and no, it's just side hooked. That's a little hilarious.
Yeah.
But watching a good hook set has always been a thrill for me for any show that I watch when they're fishing. I don't care if it's bass or walleye. The hook set is everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean to get into some other things here, but on that point, like, I don't think people, unless you're going to record, like, say you go fishing for 8 hours and you have like um, two or three massive SD cards and you got backup batteries and you got backup cameras and you can't just like record for 8 hours. So, like, you're trying to, so like, I've made it like a goal of mine to get more hook sets on camera the last couple of years. I feel like that's the best part of it, but it's hard to do because you have to anticipate and know that you're going to get
Right.
bites.
I enjoy seeing the fish break water to see what size and species it is. I enjoy watching the release of a big walleye, but the hook set, way cooler.
That's the
Way
best
cooler.
part of it. There's something
It
about
is.
just, especially when you don't see it coming, you're talking, all of a sudden, oh, it's just,
Now, when you and Brandon lost that huge walleye, watching the two of you completely crumble in the boat, that was worth the price of admission too. I mean, holy balls. You talk about two guys that just got clipped in the nuts. And to watch, I mean, you jumped up in the air,
yeah,
pissed because the fish flipped. Brandon just turned, and it was almost like I can't even look at you right now type thing, you know. And dude, that was a show all of its own right there.
which is why we made a video about it later. We made a documentary,
I
like
saw it.
interview about
Yeah,
that
I saw it.
event.
And then to back it up, he comes in with a monster pike that your net won't catch anyway. It's too small. It's not going to work. If you want that fish, you're going to have to reach down and gill his ass to bring him in because he's that big. But of course, now you got a bigger net. That's all secondary.
Yeah, good times. So
Mhm.
good times. And all of these good times are at least in part your fault because you got me into fishing.
Okay.
But more specifically, the reason I do what I do where I do has everything to do with you because as a kid, I was always like, I want to go on trips with dad to the river, as you always call it, the Missouri River, whether it's Chamberlain, Pier, Oahe,
Mhm.
Sacagawea.
Mhm.
That was like the holy grail for me. That was it. I can't tell you how excited I got the days before we would leave on a trip, but even just you telling me stories about taking other people up there was just like so amazing to me to listen to all that stuff. So how did you even start going to the Missouri River? Why were you there?
Fishing lakes is fine. Fishing lakes is fun, but they're not the walleye manufacturer that the Missouri River is. Okay.
Okay.
You have so many things to fight to be a good lake fisherman. And in the area that I currently live, most of the lakes have so much daytime boating that
Sure.
fishing is just unbearably tough. Okay. Now, when I lived in Michigan, obviously it was a different species we went after because I was just a kid. I didn't have a boat. So catching 12 to 14-inch perch on the pier of Lake Michigan was my thing, and bass fishing. But when we landed here, fishing a lot in this area, and then hearing about what was being produced on the Missouri River, with Chamberlain being the top dog for the number of eggs being laid in the hatch. Yeah, they
Mhm.
were a lot smaller fish between Chamberlain and Platte, but they were abundant. Okay. So that intrigued me. Started out by taking your grandpa and your great grandpa, and then hearing that the further up you went, the bigger they got. Well, now I have to have a piece of that. Okay.
Hmm.
So some friends of mine and I started making trips up to Oahe, and that quickly became my favorite spot on the Missouri River.
Hmm.
I did make it up to Sakakawea. We did catch a 10-pound walleye, but up there it was all an unknown.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of your time getting rid of dead water, and it eats up your trip. So I quickly went back to Hawaii just out of comfort,
Hmm.
and the fact that we could catch 4 to 6 pound walleyes constantly
Hmm.
was great fun. I remember taking a couple of guys from here, Dave Harmson, AJ Montag, and I think one other guy. And on the way, I asked AJ Montag if he'd ever caught a walleye or if he knew what a walleye looked like. And he said no. And I immediately responded with, "Well, you're going to catch a lot of walleyes this weekend."
I love that. I love that. Catfish? No, that's a walleye.
Well, at the mouth of the Cheyenne, you do tend to catch bass and a few catfish.
Hmm.
But for this trip, we're counting them all as walleyes. If you don't know what they look like, that's a walleye.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, but just an amazing place to fish. Love it.
Isn't it now?
Absolutely love it. Just loved it.
God dang. And it was almost hard for me to kind of transfer into natural lake fishing when I would try to do that because that's what I was so used to. I was used to like looking for the bluffs and the points and like when I
Mhm.
didn't have all that, I was like, I don't know what I'm looking for anymore. Where do I fish? Until you start
Right.
getting like underwater maps and stuff and you can see underwater structure as opposed to using the trained eye and
Which we didn't have.
yeah.
Okay. So it's all instinct. You can take a lake, and the only way you're going to know that these are areas with grass or lily pads or whatever underwater or a sharp drop is if you legit sat on top of it,
Right.
figured it out, and it became part of your memory.
Hmm.
So old school Missouri River is fish the points, turn inside, go a little ways into that bay, if you will, and then
Hmm.
come straight back out on that point. Well, now it's a matter of how do I figure out where I'm at for the next time? Well, landmarks. Okay. So you got Crow's Foot, and
Hmm.
all that was a dead tree that looked like an upside down crow's foot. Okay. Or the bluff in Chamberlain, pardon my French, I called it two tits. Okay. And I knew that I had to be this many, yards offshore this way, this many off that way, lined up with two tits. And that would put me on that small
Yeah.
channel where it would dip down 4 or 5 feet deeper, and it just held a ton of nice walleyes. And then you get up to Hawaii and it's even harder.
Yeah.
You're a mile wide.
Yeah.
And when you were little, such a fear of taking you up there because it could turn on a dime.
Hmm.
And it just not willing to put my precious cargo in harm's way. It took a lot for me to take you kids up there.
I
And
remember
you
you
were,
always saying that we had to take swimming lessons first before we could go. I still don't know if that was like a ruse or not, just because you weren't ready to take us or not. But
it really wasn't a ruse because I'd been on it so many times where
mhm.
it's nice in the morning and then just out of a flash, we're bucking up against 5 foot rollers. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's so freaking dangerous. And when you're in that wash machine in Cheyenne, where Cheyenne and the Missouri meet, it
Mhm.
just tosses your boat everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not willing to risk or get one of my kids hurt for a fish. Not
Mhm.
going to do it. So, yeah, Could I stay in bays that were safe? Well, I certainly did that when I took you, Brandon, and Ashley for her first time. But the fishing's a little slower and not near as much fun. But
Yeah.
safety's first. Now, if it's just me and my buddies, oh
Hmm.
hell, we didn't care.
Hmm.
I can remember going back to the boat launch. Steve Ballou is in front of me with his small boat, and as the rollers came, I completely lost sight of him.
Yeah.
And then back up the next wave, I'd see him go, and then gone. Couldn't see him. I mean, that's some bad stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not putting my kid in that, but
Right.
I don't have a problem with me being in it.
Right. Until it was you and I at Devil's Lake, like what was it, a year or two before I started guiding, and
Yeah.
we lodged the casino on the south side, and this is all in the book, by the way. If anybody's read the book, you might remember the story. But launched in the casino on the south side, really wanted to fish up in one of the bays on the north side, and it was already blown. I mean, 20 mile an hour, so like we had
Hmm.
three,
Hmm.
4 ways to begin with. Knew we
Hmm.
had to come back into them. Whatever, we can do this. And then that front came through at like 3 in the afternoon. I
Biggest risk there is that stupid lake has so many things hidden under the surface. When we're coming off the top of one of those rollers and we're coming down, we could be looking straight down at a tree stump at any moment. I mean, it was completely dangerous. That is the first time fishing with you, the man who says just one more cast, just one more hour, that we got back near the ramp and I said we could go over here and try by the bridge, and you go, "No, I'm good. Let's go in." That's the
well,
first time I've seen you ready to get off the water.
well, in part because I was running the boat that time, so I'm the one driving across the water, and I'm friggin' exhausted by the time we
I,
get
I
back.
I get that, but that die hard finally gave in after getting beat up for what, a half hour ride across that stinking
It's
huge
almost an
lake.
hour because I
And that
taught it.
Leech Lake was no different when we got caught in that crap.
Yeah, got to be careful when you're fishing, people. Big water, big waves. Watch your weather reports.
Right, but you're talking about two guys that are on a body of water that we don't know yet.
Yep.
Okay. So is there a safe passage around the edges? Well, no, there's not. This
Yeah.
is right up the gut or forget it. You're going to spend the night in that bay. Okay.
Yeah.
And the same with Leech. I mean, there was no good alternative. We
Hmm.
had to take it on and get through it. And it can be a bear.
Yeah. And I can't imagine like decent weather reports these days, like especially when it comes to wind, like yeah, they might call for 20 and it only blows 10 or it blows up to 30, but like you kind of know like if it says light and variable winds, you're not going to have to deal with anything. But
Hmm.
again, when you first started going on the Missouri River, that crap would come out of nowhere. You have no idea.
Yeah, it goes out the window because you're sitting there on the plains, if you will. The
Hmm.
first time I fished the Kakawea, no joke, I felt the hair on my neck stand up. And I thought, what is that? And I literally turned and saw a wall of wind and water coming right at us. And I've got Jepson and Baloo with me. And I'm like, reel 'em in, we gotta run. And they're like, what? And they turn and they go, what the hell is that? Well, it's this pop-up storm that, again, we don't have any phones that are going off telling us that it's coming.
Yeah.
And we take off running, and I get in this bay just in the nick of time and get up close to the beach, and holy crap, it was phenomenal. It would
Yeah.
have beat us to death out there.
Yeah.
And then hail sucks, you
I've only
know.
had that happen to me once.
Right, but I mean, put your life jacket over your head and
Yeah.
turn into a ball and hope you don't get crushed.
Hmm.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the fun part of that trip was when we're in the bay, I see all these carp, and I tell Jepson that they're northern. I said, dude, you're a northern guy. Put on your daredevil and go to town. Look at all those northern up near the surface. And he did it. He rigged up a daredevil and he just sitting there throwing at him for 10
Oh
minutes. I go,
man.
so I'm like, you haven't snagged one of them carp yet? He goes, you.
So speaking of Jepson, you got to tell the other story. Jepson, by the way, they worked together in law enforcement for a number of years. He has come out twice, taking guided trips with me, but they used to fish together all the time. And this is like the all-time Jepson story for me.
So are you talking about marking the spot?
Yeah.
Okay. So Jepson was never a believer in depth finders. Okay. Yes, we have depth finders back in the day, and they occasionally would give you a black dot, which is supposed to represent a fish. Well,
Mhm.
he's not a believer. He doesn't think that stuff works. That depth finder's stupid. That thing doesn't work. Blah, blah, blah. So I put us on a few fish, and the only way for us to mark a spot is to throw out a marker buoy. Okay. Well, I don't have one. And I said, I don't have a way to mark this spot. And Jepson goes, I got it. I go, you do with what? There's nothing on that shoreline. He says, right there with that seagull. I go, what? He goes, that seagull. There's a seagull on the shore there. I've got it marked. Oh, yeah, because that sound dead. It ain't going to move. What are you talking about?
Oh my god. The number of times he brought that up in the boat, the last two trips that he was up there, that was great.
We fished a spot around this half sunken island. You could make it all the way around if you didn't mind going through about a foot and a half of water on the one side. So I just back and forth around the outside, constantly marking these 4 or 5 just hogs sitting in 26 feet of water. That thing's full of crap. That thing don't work. Pull him through that, and all of a sudden, boom, he's setting the wood to a huge fish. Okay, it was right that time, yeah, but only that time. And I kept going back and forth on those big old pigs. And I'm calling them pigs because we caught something that was big. I
Yeah,
can't tell by the blip on the depth finder. But
yeah,
yeah, I think we picked up 3 or 4 of the few marks that I saw there, and every one of them was between that 4 and 6 pound range.
right,
And okay, so now it worked today for a while, but any other time, nah, that thing don't work. That thing can't mark fish.
right.
That's worthless. I don't know why you bought that. I think that he used a flasher back then.
Oh,
He was,
really? Did other
yeah,
guys use it on boats too at first?
huh?
Was that a
He
popular
never
thing on boats for a while?
he never owned a boat.
Okay, just for ice fishing then?
No, he would go to Canada, and he was far enough up that the boats that they would use from the resort had no depth finders, so they would take a flasher.
Okay.
So he'd throw that transducer in the water, and that's how they fished.
Hmm.
So transducer was his method. Jepson had a very solid plan in his life. Why should I own a boat when I have friends that own boats?
Yeah,
And he was right because everybody liked him enough to bring him along. So
yeah,
long as he stayed on their good side, that man went fishing, and he went fishing a lot,
yeah,
a lot. Yeah.
yeah.
I just wanted to interrupt this conversation for a brief moment to say that this podcast is not sponsored by Pissy Fun. Or is it PC Fun? How do you pronounce that? PC Fun? Pissy Fun? But it'd be pretty cool if it was, because I already used their reels anyway, and I could talk about them and how great they are. It seems like a missed opportunity. So if you're listening, PC Fun, call me.
So, like, to backtrack a little bit, like you were talking about why you started going to the Missouri River to fish, but didn't you actually initially start going there to deliver night crawlers or something? Not actually
No,
fish?
that
Or
was
is that
that was Dangler.
okay?
That I never did that. No, he
No.
told me about it. His farm had just tons of night crawlers, so he figured out he could take them where he went fishing up on the Missouri River at Platte and sell them while he was there and help pay for his trip. So he's the one that told me about that. He's the one that first took me to Platte And I'm like, yeah, this is nice, but it's just cookie cutter fish after fish after fish. They're all the same size,
Hmm.
that 14-inch category. And I got bored with it. I'm like, I want to go further up.
Hmm.
And that's, Chamberlain was fun. We fished some tournaments there, but still I wanted bigger, and Hawaii provided that, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah, Hawaii was awesome back then. And then it
Yeah,
went through some really tough times.
right. Which is in part why I wound up at Sakakawea, because we had gone to Hawaii a couple of times and it wasn't really what we remembered it after that flood in the early
No,
2010s. And then it was supposed to be like super, super hot, 100 some degrees every day. So we just decided to go to Devil's Lake instead of that time. And then eventually, well, now that we've gone to Devil's, we might as well go to Sakakawea, and
right.
we are. So,
I truly think that the water levels, the bait fish, and the fishing pressure took a huge toll on Oahe. Well, it's cyclical, so now people start to disperse and they may head for Sakakawea, Devil's Lake, and whatnot. And then you see Oahe start to come back. And
right.
then Oahe can be a beautiful fishing spot again.
And I remember like when they were struggling with losing all the rainbow smelt from that flood. And
Mhm.
then I don't remember exactly what the stories were at the time, but whether they did or didn't have Cisco's and Lake Herring in there before, we were under the impression, which may be true, that they started stocking Lake Herring instead of stocking smelt or whatever. And then we
Correct.
come to find out that Lake Herring go so deep so early in the season because they're cold water, which smelt kind of are too, but I think Cisco's go a little deeper than smelt do a little earlier. So we were kind of complaining about how it kind of ruined the fishing there, especially in the summer. Fish are so deep, can't find them. But
Right.
an interesting turn of events, especially the upper reaches of Oahe lately. I don't know if you've seen some of those fish coming out of there the last couple of years.
Yeah.
They broke the state record 2 or 3 times
Hmm.
this fall, because it's
Hmm.
like you get fish this size that are just trying to get by, looking for the few smelt that are left, or random shiners, perch, whatever it is. But once they get to a certain size, they start chasing those Cisco's, and they go from, I mean, god dang, that lake's putting out just
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
giant. If you want true giants, they're Cisco eaters in the
Right.
majority of
And back in my day, they were never putting herring and Cisco in there. That was
them.
not
Yeah,
a big fish. And I think they actually went through some years where they were kind of arguing about if they should be doing it at all, you know,
doing what at all?
putting in bait fish. So I think that there was some lack of that for a while that really hurt it too. I don't have proof of that, but that was the word between all of the fishermen.
Yeah,
And then
and some,
you got the people that run the the dams and how much water gets released versus what we want as fishermen, and those two things don't always line up. So
right.
now you're up there and you're in this fast moving water. Well, you don't want to be in that, you
Mhm.
know. And it's because they're releasing so much water to float the barges all the way down by Sioux City. Well, yeah, that's great for them, but not good for us today, you
Mhm.
know. And I have fished all those, tail race and all that crap, that fast water. I'm just not a fan of it.
It's different.
So,
I've
yeah,
actually
I
been
pref- I
with them.
prefer to be up on the Hawaii side.
Sure.
There's been a few times where we had to go down because that was the only place the fish were hitting. We didn't fish the fast water, but
Mhm.
we certainly fished some shallow water,
Right.
and that's not always fun either.
It's a little sketchy running the boat around when you don't know where you're going.
Exactly. And it can go to 2 feet in a heartbeat while you're traveling 30 miles an hour and you're screwed.
Yeah, like the time that we launched below the dam at Oahe because we wanted to go down to Sharks. We heard the bite was better. And I'm
Hmm.
trying to follow my map, and you're telling me I need to go this way. And I decided to follow you like a little kid instead of follow my map. And we wound up on a mud bar.
Whoa,
Remember that?
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Remember that story?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. That is not what happened. I made the statement that did you see that boat in front of us go
Uh huh.
out wide?
Hmm.
Now, when I looked at your depth finder and I saw the red, you had said to me that it was upside down.
It,
So I
yeah,
said, fine.
there's a
And
difference
I
between the
didn't,
up versus the position up or whatever heading.
okay. So
Right?
I didn't argue with you. What happened, and you can call your brother and confirm this,
Okay.
as it was going into the main channel, I said to you, did you see how wide that guy went
Mhm.
in front of us? There must be a reason for it. I think that you took that and actually went out wide, and that's when you muttered it.
Yeah, I
I
think it
don't
was a
think
little
it was
bit of
about the
both.
depth finder.
Yeah, because I think you were right that you had to go that wide eventually, but I took that
Right,
as I need to get wide now because yeah, yeah.
right.
It was both.
I
We've
don't
had
think it was,
communication
I don't,
issues over the years in boats.
yeah, and I don't think I was arguing once you explained to me that the grid on the depth finder was inverted.
Yeah,
I didn't argue that point with you. It was a matter of neither one of us have been in this small channel going into the river.
yeah.
And did that guy just do that for a reason? Did you see that?
Hmm.
And then later on, Brandon pointed out, well, you told him to go out wide. And I said, actually, I said, did you see that? But I understand why he did it.
Hmm.
But we never even had to get out of the boat.
We
I
didn't.
no, I gunned it and got us out
We
of there.
didn't.
But we didn't have to get out. Dangler borrowed my boat one time for the Governor's Cup, and I don't remember what river comes in where he was at. I want to say the White, but I think that's at Chamberlain, so that's not right.
That's below Chamberlain.
Anyway, he went flying across, and the next thing you know, he had my boat beached. And it was him and Hank Grant, who's a school teacher, fishing in it. So yeah, they had to get out and get that baby off the beach and back into the water. But there was so much silt coming out of that small river
Hmm.
that what he normally believes is 10 to
Yep.
15 feet was not.
Yep.
Okay. Just wasn't. And he had no clue. It wasn't his fault.
Right.
It was just circumstance.
Yeah. So, do you have any good tournament fishing stories from the few tournaments you fished in?
The the tournament that we actually did the best, I was incredibly sick the night before.
Well, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I had parabolic flu. I was up all night throwing up and the
Mm,
entire night.
yikes.
He and I would normally fish up top and made a decision that we've got to go south. We got to go down. We can't go up where all the boats are fishing together in the same spots, basically pulling those 14 inchers. We've got to find 18 to 22s to do anything in this tournament. And we'd fished it once before.
Hmm.
So we did go down, and even during pre-fishing, we caught some really nice fish down there. But yeah, we were boating really, really good fish. Problem is, we're quite a ways away. We need to keep an eye on the clock and make sure we're back on time because we've got a pretty good limit,
Hmm.
or I'm close to our limit. But yeah, I think we placed fourth.
I think that's what the plaque said. I remember looking at it when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think it was fourth.
Hmm.
So it was a pretty good year.
Yeah.
Yeah. That tournament has a ton of boats, you know,
Oh,
and
no.
they do the shotgun start crap. Um, I'm in a boat that I bought that was wrecked.
Hmm.
I didn't have money, you know. Your mom and I are just starting out. Pretty sure you're both born at that time. But I happen to be down at this auto place that has wrecked vehicles, and
Hmm.
I see a boat sitting there. Well, I've always wanted a boat, right? So
Hmm.
I'm like, what do you want for that boat? And they're just giving me this stupid number, right? And I'm like, the whole back end's busted out. They go, yeah, it was stolen. The guy crashed it. So I'm not giving you that for it. If you decide to get reasonable, let me know. But I said, do you mind if I jump in it? I jumped in it and jumped up and down the floor. I'm like, this is complete wreck. Okay, this whole floor's got to be changed. Well, before I left, I talked him down to, I think it was like $700 for this boat. There's no motor on it. Okay. So it's not
Yeah.
like it's some great deal. So I fixed that thing up, put a motor on it. So I'm probably smaller than a lot of people in that tournament. And when we go out of that shotgun start the first year, I've got a guy with probably a 200 next to me. We both gun it, and he puts a wake that comes over the side of my boat right down my mouth. I mean, I ate it big time. Why we all think we have to take off a million miles an hour, like somebody's gonna get my spot, you know. So it was kind of stupid, but it's an adrenaline rush. You had to do it.
Right.
Everybody else was, let's rock. So
It's not that much different on just like a normal weekend in the summertime at a boat ramp anymore either.
I
Mm.
know, and it seems a little bit silly, but once you're in the open water, it's super nice to have a big motor that you can get because a lot of times you're going 5 to 10 miles. It's
Right.
nice to get there and save some of your fishing time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. What about kid fishing stories?
Kid
Like,
fishing stories.
what about how big was Brandon's smallmouth bass that he caught at Spirit Lake
I personally think that it was a record.
the other day? Was
Huh?
it We were talking about this the other day. We couldn't remember if it was just short or like just above what would have been a state record.
It didn't get weighed and or measured.
Right.
Okay. So we catch it, I keep it. I want it to be shown to the game wardens that I know are on the lake. And when I'm showing it to them, they said that it qualifies for some big fish patch,
Hmm.
but they never measured it or weighed it.
Hmm.
So Brandon did receive some patch for it,
Yeah.
but
Like a angler thing.
dude, I think it was right at the state record. I had nothing in the boat to weigh it or measure it. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if the game wardens did and chose not to. They felt that from their vision that it wasn't.
Hmm.
So you pretty much take them at their word, and that's what we did. But dude, that thing was big,
And
and we
we're
caught it night fishing
right.
with
We were killing cranks at night, weren't we?
crankbaits. Yeah,
Like, made
yeah,
no sense. I was expecting a pike
yeah.
or a really big walleye or something,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
probably did something goofy, handing the rod off to Brandon and holding him in the boat because he's going to fall off or whatever.
Yeah, it was crazy, and the thing fought like no other, and it was huge. I'd never seen a smallie that big, especially on Spirit Lake.
Yeah.
Okay, it was mammoth, just mammoth, and I was convinced that it was a record, but
Hmm.
don't know. Too
Neither
late
do I.
now. Yeah,
Waste late now.
I don't know if you remember, but there were times when we'd be fishing, and some of the days would be incredibly calm and incredibly hot.
Hmm.
I had a huge habit of not telling anybody and just jumping overboard
You remember that.
because I'm
Definitely.
so flippin' hot and the fish are not, playing along. And I would frequently just jump in the water
Yep.
and it would freak everybody out because I'm
Oh,
sure they thought I fell over. And then
yeah.
I
Yep.
would just come swimming back up to it,
Yep.
jump back in. But yeah, when you've made that journey, you want to keep fishing, even though you probably should just pack it in for the day. But
Right.
when you and Brandon were small, I would normally tell you guys, you choose. Do you want to catch a lot of fish or do you want to catch big fish? Okay. Well, you were always big fish. Brandon was kind of on the fence.
Yep.
So I would tell you that if we go after big ones, we're not going to catch a lot of fish. Okay. They're not as active. The little guys love to steal the bait first. So you're not going to be as active, and I want you to have a good time. So if reeling in fish after fish after fish is your thing, I'll take you to spots that have 14-inch walleyes.
Sure.
If you want lunkers, there's going to be a lot of dead time, okay? So on this particular trip, you both agreed that you wanted big fish. Well, Brandon had not had a fish yet, all right? And we've got just enough wind that I am drifting sideways. I don't think I had a drift sock out, but I get a bite, and it's a large fish. You can tell by the way this thing is biting that he's
Hmm.
big, okay? Brandon has his back to me, and I put the screws to this big ass fish, right? And then I look at Brandon and I go, dude, I got to pee so bad, hold my pole. So I hand him that pole with that hooked fish. He immediately has the fight of his life, okay? He's like, geez, Dad, you're so stupid. You got a fish out here and you got to pee instead. But nothing lit me up more than to watch you guys reel in those big fish.
Hmm.
I mean, you're just ecstatic, beside yourself, jumping up and down. Got to have the pictures taken. You never forget that. Pride and joy. Pride and joy.
Speaking of never forgetting a big fish, coming
Yeah,
full circle, that fish that you caught 2 falls ago now, or was it three? I think 2 years ago fall.
probably.
That 28 and change, probably pushing 10-pound walleye.
Mm.
I have watched that clip so many times. I have put that in so many different videos because I think it's so freaking amazing. And I never get tired of it. I will never, ever forget it.
Yes! Oh my God!
Holy
No!
cow.
Holy yes! That's a hog!
Oh my God. I think that's the biggest wall I've ever seen.
Brando, give me a photo. Brandon!
If somebody hasn't seen that clip yet, I'm sure I've already spliced it in here in the middle of this podcast so that you can see it.
You know,
It's
and oddly enough, I did not think he was that big
I know. I
until he
remember that.
got by the boat.
Hmm.
When she got by the boat, she became a big fish. She could see that boat and she went into panic mode.
Yep.
Coming in from where I had thrown the lure,
Hmm.
no, I thought it was pretty average, 18 to
Yeah.
20. And then once it's by the boat, oh my word. Now the drag's going and this thing's real.
Hmm.
What a fish.
Yeah.
What a fish. That was a nice fish. And again, you ask me if that's my biggest fish. I don't know.
Right.
We didn't we didn't think in those terms. We
Hmm.
didn't measure fish. Yeah, we may have had a 14-inch limit, but we knew what 14 inches was, and we certainly had some sort of a ruler in the boat. But like on Hawaii, it was not very often that we needed to measure a fish, you
Right.
know. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was definitely a fish.
That still might be, what am I trying to say? I'm thinking through other I can't remember a fish that was put together that well. We've
Okay.
had a few longer fish, and obviously the one that Brandon snagged in the tail that we didn't get in the boat, that was much bigger.
I think
I've
that was over 30.
I It was at least 30.
Yeah, I think that was over 30.
Granted, sometimes when you see fish in the water, you get the
Dude,
shock
it was
value.
on the surface. And
That
I
thing was,
saw it on top of that net.
I've never seen
Those
a
are
walleye that big.
those are two pretty good views of that
Yeah,
fish. On the surface and laying across that entire net.
yeah,
That fish was over 30.
yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter in the end, but what would have been nice was to get it in the boat and take a picture with it
Heck yeah,
because that was just a
yeah,
monster
yeah.
walleye. My goodness. Wished he'd have got it in the mouth
Oh yeah,
because then it would have been all tired from fighting. You'd
Yep.
have netted it even in that smaller net.
Yep.
What a fish! What a
Yeah.
fish! No, the northern was big too, but it's still a northern. You know.
Yeah. I mean, on a relative basis, the northern wasn't one of the biggest northern I had ever seen. That was the biggest walleye I've ever seen.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it would have been cool to see him with a photograph of that fish,
Hmm.
but it was just the way it went.
I think Grandpa had the biggest walleye in the family, did he not?
Yeah. And I want to say it was just short of 10 pounds. I
Yeah.
don't know how long it was. He and I went up to pier by ourselves and just horrible weather,
Hmm.
flipping horrible. And now I'm scrambling, trying to find places that I feel are safe. Grandpa would get a little edgy as he got older,
Yeah.
for the risk part and the waves and whatnot. So I'm in a very unfamiliar place only because I feel like I can launch at that spot.
Hmm.
Um, and it's quite a ways up above pier, okay? So I'm fishing unknown water, and I don't remember if I'm trolling or drifting, but I had broken off on a fish. So I'm retying that lure, and every so often you pop your head up, look at the depth finder, go, oh crap. And Dad's like, what? I said, oh, I got you in 46 feet of water. Sorry, give me a few minutes here. I'll get us back on the track that I want to be on. He's like, no problem. I'll just let out extra line and pull right through it. All right, that's cool. Whatever. You're probably not going to catch anything, but whatever. And I finished tying, and he liked a very long pole and kind of a stiff rod. And I see him put the screws to this thing like he's flipping trying to snag a shark. Okay. I mean, just the biggest hook set I've ever seen in my life. Thank God puts a hook into a fish, because if he hadn't have snagged into something, he'd have flipped out the other side of the boat. That's how big of a frickin' set he had. And this pole is bent, and it's a big, stiff rod. I'm like, damn, are you snagged? And all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang. I see the tip of that rod. I'm like, this is a fish, Dad. I
Hmm.
know. I know. So the fight is on, windier and crap. I'm trying to maneuver the boat. I don't want him to lose this fish. And by golly, he got it to the boat. I got that thing netted, and I had not seen a fish that big. Okay, not a walleye. So I told him there's a contest in town for the biggest fish. Should we leave and go enter that thing? Because it's like a $10,000 prize.
Hmm.
And he goes, as rough as it is, I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
it. So we loaded up, headed into that bait shop, and wish I could give you an exact, but I can't. It was 9 something
Hmm.
pounds, okay? And he was several tenths short of winning the money.
Yeah.
It was so close. I mean, a couple of split shot short, you
Yeah.
know, but the fish of his lifetime was taken on that weekend.
Yep.
His trip was made, even though it was crappy. I mean, we fought the wind every stinking day, and you got off the water and you just wanted to go to bed. You were
Yeah.
so beat up from the wind, but his trip of a lifetime with that fish, incredible. The trip that we took to Canada,
Hmm.
and we were in some pretty rough water. that was pretty hard on him at his age, you know. So that particular day that I got you and Brandon out of the boat and into the boat with Kevin,
Yeah.
I'm using a boat that's got a tiller. Dad's up front and he's hanging on, white knuckled, and he's just losing it. And I stopped that boat and get it sideways in the waves, and I said, Dad, you have got to calm down. I will get us through this. I will get us to shore. Yes, we're in a small boat, and these things have a big distance between the rollers, so they're really dangerous, you know. But I said, you've got to calm down because you're fighting and you're leaning, and you're going to
Mhm.
cause a problem. So just calm down. Let me get you there. And he did. But by golly, the next day he didn't go fishing. He stayed in the
Yeah.
cabin. You know, it rocked his world, and it was horrible. It was bad. You know, but again, none of us, nobody out in that water knew that was coming. And when
No.
it hit quick. And we weren't hidden in some bay. We were already in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
We didn't have a chance. You can't go that way. You might as well go towards where your cabin is for that boat launch, you know.
You know, it's crazy. Like I think, especially when you get back in the years to where people didn't have phones and weather equipment out on boats, I feel like people have more stories about how they almost died on the water than they do about actually fishing. But they're good
Okay, but
stories.
a lot of it was stupidity,
Sure.
okay? But in the end, the ones that I'm talking about, there was nothing in the forecast that said
Yeah.
that was coming. We
Yeah.
had no warning, all right?
Hmm.
If we'd have had something of today's standard, could we have received a warning that it was coming or moving in? Yes.
Hmm.
But back in those days, none of those instances had a warning. They came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
you know. So we certainly would never put kids in
Right.
peril. And thankfully, Kevin's boat was bigger, and the two of you were capable of riding in that with him and definitely beat us to shore, you know. And I'm trying to puddle jump with that tiller drive.
Right.
that front
That's
end
right.
is that front end's automatically up. You know what I
That's right.
mean? You
Yeah.
can't see. You can't see while you're driving it, and all it wants to do is just flip over backwards. You know, that was and my dad was not liking it, not
Apparently,
one bit. Yeah,
apparently not.
but we got there.
We did. We always have. Otherwise, we
We
wouldn't be here talking.
Yeah, I mean, nobody in this group, this family, has ever been injured, to my knowledge.
I don't think so.
I mean, maybe you guys got some mental scars fishing with me as kids, but I don't think you have any physical scars.
I don't think so either. Not that I can find.
And quite frankly, fishing was always fun. It was always a good time. And even what we did after we got off the water was fun, you
Yeah.
know. The cleaning of the fish, the headed back to town to go out to eat, whatever. We always had a good time. Fishing was always a big part of our lives and was always a good time. And what a better way to spend time together unless you're going to go golfing, you
Yeah.
know. It was fun. And
Yeah.
it was always the anticipation of something big's coming out of that water,
Yeah.
you know. And
And like,
even the weekends that it didn't, I mean,
yeah.
I've got a picture of you, Trish, and Brandon holding some of the smallest fish I've ever seen in my life. Okay. And why we kept them, I don't know. But it
Yeah.
must have been to appease you.
Right.
But not every trip was great. But I think your brain only allows you to think of the good ones. You certainly have forgotten the bad ones.
That's why they call them fish stories, right?
Right. I mean, we had plenty of times that we went fishing and it was not good,
Yeah.
but there was always fish.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have a trip where there was no fish, at
Right.
least not that I recall. But Some of those fish were pretty small. And that was always fun fishing with Chanley because she wanted to keep everything,
Hmm.
because she always, that's a fish. We got to eat it. Well, yeah, but this is a bluegill and it's only 3 inches long, hon. I don't think we can clean that. There's always stories to tell, there's always another trip to take. And every time you see a video and somebody has landed a big fish, it's just another desire to go fishing again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love fishing. I love
Me
it.
too. Fishing's awesome.
It is. And you now have a life of it, you know, which is pretty flippin' amazing, to make a life out of something that you enjoy so much and a true passion. That's really super cool. Really cool.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nice to talk to you
And
as
you're
always.
pretty damn good too.
Am I now?
Well, and I not to blow your head up, but the people that I talk to that have either watched your videos, gone fishing with you, constantly tell me about how that kid knows his
Hmm, that's cool.
and I've only got one response. Well, of course he does. Where do you think he learned it?
I learned from the master. I started with the master. Oops.
I don't know
Oh.
about the master part, but I think, yeah, I do think I have a little influence.
Hmm.
Your depth is 100 times better than mine. We never had this is what a fish wants when it's this cloudy. This is what a fish wants when it's this cold. This is the depth they want to be. This is what they're going after. We didn't have that knowledge back then. And maybe you were just lucky to have all that new technology,
That
which is
helps.
amazing, but not a lot of people understand it and are capable of turning it into a good fishing trip. You
Hmm.
know, any boob can take a boat out on the water and throw out a line.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you're going to pull in a walleye. Proud of you.
Since we're on that topic,
Yeah.
what was your thought? Because you at one point in time, you and Brandon, my brother, for those that haven't figured that out by now, had talked about this guiding idea as a potential thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that I actually finally did it at some point. Why it would wound up being me instead of you guys, I wasn't entirely sure at the time. I know now, but
I
what was your
was
what happened?
I was excited about the idea, okay, because fishing is a passion. Totally excited. But our paths changed, okay? With my wife becoming ill, okay, my ability to leave and be gone that long quickly changed. And then she became disabled. How am I going to do that and keep up with her needs, if you will? Okay.
Hmm.
I think Brandon seriously wanted it, but there was a fear factor for him. Okay.
Hmm.
And then there was you who was bound and determined that I want to change my lifestyle. And you picked the thing that made you feel the best. Okay. You were going to get nothing but support from me on any idea unless I felt it had just huge downside. Okay. I'm not going to say anything negative. I'm going to give you everything I can that supports your idea and help you get on that path. So I was all for it and was convinced that you could do it. You're one of those people that overstudies freaking everything. All right. The guy that has to video his own golf swing and break it down 10,000 times is a guy that's going to take this serious and dig as deep as he can to know this job. Okay. I was convinced that you'd be successful as all get out. There's going to be some heartache when you start. You're not going to have a clientele. You got to go get them. But I knew you could do it. There was no doubt in my mind you could do it. The timing was not good for me. The timing was not good for Brandon, but I knew it was going to be for you. And you obviously are very successful at it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm proud of you.
Thanks. That means a lot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks again. I appreciate you. Love you. Thanks for talking.
Love you more.